An exhausted waiter serves a discreet customer without recognizing that it's Steph Curry. During an emergency call from the hospital, he mentions his 8-year-old son fighting leukemia. What happens in the following weeks leaves an entire family in shock. No one imagined that a simple conversation in a restaurant would completely change a child's destiny. This is the story that the press never covered. The fine autumn rain fell on San Francisco that Wednesday night, creating a mirrored shine on the asphalt that reflected the city lights. Steph Curry, wearing a discreet cap and a gray hoodie, parked his Tesla in the small parking lot of a restaurant in the Mission District. It wasn't the type of establishment that normally received NBA stars, and that was exactly why he had chosen it. Tina's Kitchen was a mid-range family restaurant with yellowish lighting and well-maintained wooden tables. The aroma of spices and homemade sauce filled the cozy environment. Steph had discovered the place by chance after a particularly exhausting shooting session at the Golden State Warriors training center. His body was asking for carbohydrates and protein, and something about that small restaurant had attracted him. "Table for one, sir?" asked the receptionist, a middle-aged lady who clearly recognized him but maintained the discretion that San Francisco residents typically demonstrated with local celebrities. "Yes, preferably in a quieter corner," Steph replied with a tired smile. She led him to a secluded table near a window overlooking the wet street. Perfect for someone who wanted to observe the movement of the city without being the center of attention. Not that there were many customers at that hour, just a few couples, a group of friends, and 2 executives discussing business in low voices. "Michael will be your waiter tonight," the receptionist informed before withdrawing. Minutes later, a Latino man of approximately 35 years appeared with a notepad and a glass of water. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes, but a genuine smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Tina's Kitchen," he said, placing the glass on the table. His eyes met Steph's, and there was a brief flash of recognition, but, like a true San Francisco professional, he made no fuss. "Can I bring you something to drink while you decide?" "Just sparkling water, please," Steph replied, appreciating the normalcy of the treatment. "And what are the house specialties?" Michael began to describe the dishes with moderate enthusiasm, recommending the grilled salmon with lemon risotto and the chicken with rosemary sauce. The conversation was flowing naturally when the phone in Michael's pocket vibrated. He quickly checked the screen, and his face instantly transformed. "Forgive me, sir. It's an emergency. May I answer it quickly?" "Of course. Go ahead," Steph replied, noticing the sudden tension in the waiter's face. Michael stepped back a few paces, turning partially toward the wall. Even trying to be discreet, the concern in his voice was palpable. "Hello? Yes, I'm Ethan Rodriguez's father." "What? When did it start?" No. Tell Dr. Williams I'll be there as soon as my shift ends. I can't get there before 11 p.m. Is Elena with him now?" Okay. Tell him Daddy will be there soon." There was a fragility in Michael's voice that contrasted with his previous professional posture. He took a deep breath, ran his hand over his face, and returned to Steph's table. "I apologize for the interruption," he said, trying to compose his voice. "Have you decided what you'd like to order?" Steph looked into the man's eyes and saw something familiar there. The look of someone trying to maintain composure while carrying an enormous weight. It was the same look he had seen in teammates facing serious injuries, or in parents worried about their children's future. "Is everything okay?" Steph asked gently, ignoring the menu. Michael hesitated. Normally, he didn't mix his personal life with work, especially with customers. But there was something in the genuine concern in Steph's gaze that momentarily broke his professional barrier. "It's my son," he replied with a slightly trembling voice. "He's in the hospital. Again?" "I'm sorry," Steph said sincerely. "Is it something serious?" Michael hesitated again, evaluating how much he should share. Maybe it was fatigue, maybe the need to vent, or maybe simply the kindness in the customer's eyes. "Leukemia," he finally said. "Ethan is 8 years old and has been fighting leukemia for almost a year." The word hung heavily between them. Steph felt a tightness in his chest, instantly remembering the charitable campaigns for children's hospitals in which he participated, the faces of the children he visited, the fragility of life. "I'm very sorry to hear that," replied Steph, placing the menu on the table. "Today, he had a high fever again," continued Michael, as if a floodgate had opened. "Probably means another infection. His immune system, well, chemotherapy leaves him vulnerable." "You're going to see him after work?" "Yes, as soon as I finish my shift at 10:30 p.m. Then I have to take the bus to the UCSF Medical Center. Parking there is very expensive," he explained, giving a sad smile. "But he's strong, my Ethan. Stronger than me." "I'm sure he is," agreed Steph. "And I'm also sure he has an excellent example of strength in you." The comment seemed to touch Michael, who lowered his gaze for a moment, composing himself. "You're very kind, sir. Now, what would you like to order?" "I'll take your recommendation. The salmon with risotto sounds great." Michael nodded and walked away to place the order. Steph observed him walking between the tables, serving other customers with a professional smile that perfectly masked his inner turmoil. How many people like this did he cross paths with daily? How many stories of silent struggle went unnoticed in brief everyday encounters? During dinner, Steph observed Michael working. The efficiency with which he served the dishes, the kindness with which he treated the elderly customers at a nearby table, the dignity with which he carried his invisible burden. When the waiter returned to ask if everything was okay with the meal, Steph decided to continue the conversation. "Your son, does he like sports?" Michael's face momentarily lit up. "Basketball. He's crazy about basketball. Before he got sick, he played in the Rebai neighborhood school league. Now he watches all the games he can on the hospital tablet." "Does he have a favorite team?" Michael smiled, not realizing the irony of the situation. "Warriors, of course. We're originally from Oakland. Ethan has posters, t-shirts, especially of Curry. He says one day he'll shoot like him." Steph felt an unexpected emotion at that revelation. So many encounters in life seemed orchestrated by a strange coincidence. "I bet he will," Steph replied, controlling the emotion in his voice. "Children have an incredible ability to recover and achieve their dreams." "That's what I tell him every day," agreed Michael, briefly glancing at his watch. "There's an experimental treatment that could help him a lot, but, well, insurance doesn't cover it, and the costs are astronomical. That's why I have 2 jobs." "2 jobs?" "Yes. Here at night and at a sporting goods store during the day. Elena, my wife, takes care of him full-time now. We had to take our daughter, Sophia, out of private school, but we'll manage. There's always a way, isn't there?" "There always is," Steph nodded thoughtfully. Michael was called by another customer and excused himself, returning to work. Steph finished his meal slowly, lost in thought, observing the waiter who had no idea who he had really served on that rainy night in San Francisco. Steph discreetly checked his watch. It was past 9:30 p.m., and normally he would already be on his way home, following his meticulously planned routine to ensure adequate rest before morning training. However, Something kept him there at Tina's kitchen. He ordered a chamomile tea, extending his stay in the restaurant that was gradually emptying. Michael and his son's story had touched him deeply. As he watched the waiter circulate among the tables, Steph was momentarily transported to his own childhood in Charlotte, North Carolina. Few knew how much asthma had affected his early years, the attacks that left him breathless, the constant fear of not being able to play sports like the other boys. He recalled the countless nights his parents spent awake by his bedside, monitoring his breathing, and the sacrifices they made to ensure he had the best possible treatment. "Anything else, sir?" asked Michael, approaching with the bill on a small tray. Steph looked around. The restaurant was almost empty now. "Actually, if you have a moment, I'd like to talk more," said Steph, surprising himself with that direct approach. "Your son, Ethan, right? You mentioned an experimental treatment." Michael hesitated, checking if there were other tables demanding his attention. With the restaurant almost empty, he discreetly pulled up a chair and sat down, maintaining a posture that indicated he could stand up immediately if called. "I'm sorry to bring up the subject again," continued Steph, "but I have some friends involved with foundations for children's treatments, and I was touched by your story." Michael's tired eyes gained a momentary gleam of hope, quickly replaced by reality. "It's a CAR-T immunotherapy protocol that was recently approved," he explained. "The doctors say Ethan would be an ideal candidate because of his genetic profile and the stage of the disease, but—" Michael made a resigned gesture with his hands. "We're talking about almost $500,000 that insurance refuses to cover because it's considered experimental, despite the high success rates in trials." Steph nodded, absorbing the information. $500,000, an insignificant amount for someone in his financial position, but an astronomical sum for a working family. "How is he handling all this? Ethan, I mean?" Michael's face softened, a mixture of pride and pain. "He's amazing. He has bad days, of course, especially after chemotherapy sessions, but his resilience— sometimes I think he's being strong for us, not the other way around." Michael took his phone from his pocket and, after swiping through the screen a few times, showed a photo to Steph. It was a skinny boy with a wide smile despite his hairless head, wearing a blue Warriors t-shirt with the number 30 printed on it. In the photo, Ethan was sitting on a hospital bed, but his posture was that of someone ready to step onto the court. This was from 3 weeks ago, during a Warriors game against the Lakers. "We watched it together on the tablet," explained Michael. "He imitates Curry's shooting movements even lying in bed, you know? The nurses already know that on game days, room 412 will have live commentary." Steph felt his throat tighten as he looked at the boy in the photo. How many times had he visited children's hospitals as part of his charitable activities, but always as a celebrity, always knowing he would leave afterward? There was something deeply human and intimate about knowing this boy's story through his exhausted father's eyes, without the filter of cameras or public relations. "And your wife and other daughter? How are they coping?" Michael sighed deeply. "Elena is a rock. She gave up her job as a nurse to be with Ethan full-time. The irony is that she used to care for other patients, and now—" He paused. "Sophia is only 5 years old. She misses her brother at home, draws pictures to decorate his hospital room. We had to explain why Ethan's hair fell out, why he can't play in the park anymore." Michael interrupted himself when the kitchen door opened. A middle-aged man with a manager badge gave him a meaningful look. "I need to get back," said Michael quickly, standing up. "Sorry to take your time with our problems." "Not at all," replied Steph. Thank you for sharing. I'm lucky to have this job. Mr. Patel is understanding when I need to switch shifts to accompany Ethan for procedures. But, Michael lowered his voice, there are limits to understanding when you have a business to run. Steph watched the waiter return to his routine, helping to prepare the restaurant for closing. An idea was beginning to form in his mind, but he needed time to develop it properly. As Michael cleaned a nearby table, Steph decided to ask one last question. Michael, which hospital is Ethan being treated at? UCSF Medical Center, in the Pediatric Oncology Wing, he replied. Dr. Williams is the responsible oncologist. An excellent doctor, works miracles with what he has available. Steph nodded, memorizing the names. He took the bill that Michael had left, inserting his credit card and adding a substantial tip, generous enough to make a difference, but not so exaggerated as to arouse suspicion. I'm sure Ethan will be fine, said Steph as he signed the receipt. He has an amazing father fighting for him. Michael smiled gratefully, but with evident fatigue. Thank you for your kind words and for listening. It was therapeutic, in a way. I hope to see you here again. You can count on it, replied Steph, putting on his discreet cap and preparing to leave. As he left the restaurant, the rain had turned into a fine drizzle. Steph stopped on the sidewalk, observing through the window as Michael continued his work, having no idea that he had shared his son's story with the boys very idle. As he walked to his car, Steph made a call. Bob, I know it's late, but I need a favor, he said to his foundation manager. I want a meeting tomorrow with the entire Eat, Learn, Play team. We have a new project to discuss. As he drove through the wet streets of San Francisco, Steph couldn't get the image of the skinny boy with the number 30 t-shirt out of his head, smiling from a hospital bed. Some connections seemed destined to happen, and Steph had the strange feeling that his encounter with Michael hadn't been mere coincidence. Through the car window, the city lights reflected in puddles like small earthly stars, reminding him that sometimes the greatest opportunities to make a difference arise in the most unexpected places. The FEPID headquarters of the Eat, Learn, Play Foundation occupied a modern space in downtown Oakland, with glass walls and a view of the San Francisco Bay. A week had passed since the encounter at Tina's kitchen, and Steph was sitting at the head of an oval conference table, surrounded by his executive team. The atmosphere was informal but focused, exactly how he preferred to conduct his philanthropic business. So, what's so urgent that it justified rescheduling 3 commitments? Asked Amanda Chen, the foundation's executive director, adjusting her glasses while organizing a stack of documents. Steph leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. I met someone, he began. A waiter named Michael Rodriguez. He has an 8-year-old son named Ethan, fighting leukemia at UCSF Medical Center. For the next 15 minutes, Steph reported in detail his encounter, the conversation, the photo of the boy with his Warriors t-shirt. The room fell into absorbing silence as he spoke. The team, accustomed to hearing moving stories, but realizing that this one, in particular, had affected Steph in a unique way. I want to verify everything, he concluded, and if the story is exactly what it seems, I want the foundation to intervene, not just for the treatment, but to create a complete plan for the family. Amanda nodded, taking notes on her tablet. Darren, I want our legal team to discreetly verify the situation. Medical history, financial needs, everything, she instructed the Foundation's lawyer. Jordan, contact UCSF. We have good connections there since our pediatric nutrition program. We need to be extremely discreet, emphasized Steph. I don't want the family to know I'm involved, at least not initially. This isn't for publicity. The team knew this side of Steph well. For every philanthropic action disclosed by the media, there were dozens that he kept in absolute secrecy, away from the spotlight and cameras. "We'll work on this immediately," assured Amanda. "We'll have preliminary information by the end of the day." 2 days later, Steph parked his car in the underground parking lot of UCSF Medical Center. He wore simple clothes, jeans, black t-shirt, discreet cap, and non-prescription glasses that subtly altered the shape of his face. It was a minimalist disguise, but enough to avoid immediate recognition in an environment where people were concerned with much more important issues than celebrities. On the 4th floor, he met with Dr. Rebecca Williams, chief pediatric oncologist and member of his foundation's board. She was waiting for him in her office, with a folder of documents prepared. "Steph, thank you for coming personally," she said, closing the door to ensure privacy. "We've reviewed Ethan Rodriguez's case in detail. Your interest couldn't have come at a better time." The doctor opened the folder, revealing exams, reports, and a detailed history of the treatment. "Ethan is at a critical stage. Conventional chemotherapy isn't producing the expected results, and we're observing increasing resistance. The CAR-T treatment that Michael mentioned is indeed the best option." "And insurance really doesn't cover it?" "Unfortunately not. It's considered experimental, despite excellent results in similar cases." She turned a page. "Besides the procedure itself, there are all the associated costs: post-treatment monitoring, support medications, possible complications." "What's the total?" "We're talking about $675,000 when we consider the entire care package." Steph nodded, processing the information. "And what about the chances of success?" The doctor allowed herself a cautious smile. "With Ethan's genetic profile and the stage of the disease, we're looking at a remission rate of approximately 70%. Those are very good numbers for this type of refractory leukemia." "When could we start?" "As soon as we have the financial guarantee, we can start the process within 72 hours. The cells are already being cultured as part of the research protocol." Steph stood up and approached the office window, which overlooked the corridor of the pediatric wing. Children with different levels of illness walked slowly with their parents or were transported in wheelchairs by smiling nurses, each carrying their own battle. "What else do we know about the family?" Dr. Williams consulted another document. "Michael works 2 jobs, as he mentioned. Elena was a nurse here, at UCSF, irony of fate. She requested unpaid leave when Ethan was diagnosed. The younger daughter, Sophia, stayed with her paternal grandparents during the most intense periods of treatment. The family is essentially living day by day, economically speaking." Steph returned to the table, his decision already formed. "I want to cover the treatment fully, with an additional $100,000 for related expenses, transportation, accommodation near the hospital if necessary, food, anything that makes their lives easier during the process. I also want to create a fund for the children's education." The doctor didn't seem surprised, but visibly moved. "And how do you want to proceed with the family? They'll want to know where the money came from." "For now, just say that an anonymous donor heard about the case and decided to help. No mention of my name or the foundation. I want them to focus only on Ethan's recovery." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Michael was organizing dirty dishes in the kitchen of Tina's kitchen. His phone vibrated in his pocket, showing the hospital's name on the screen. His heart immediately accelerated, as it did whenever he received calls from UCSF. With trembling hands, he answered. "Hello? Michael Rodriguez speaking." "Mr. Rodriguez, this is Samantha from the Administrative Department of UCSF Medical Center." The voice sounded strangely excited for a routine hospital call. "I'm calling about the experimental treatment we discussed for Ethan." Michael leaned against the kitchen sink, mentally preparing himself for another insurance denial, another closed door. "Yes, what happened?" "Well, something extraordinary happened. The CAR-T treatment has been approved for Ethan." Michael frowned, confused. "But how? The insurance has already refused 3 times. "Actually, it's not the insurance, Mr. Rodriguez. A philanthropic research program has selected Ethan as an ideal candidate for the protocol, covering 100% of the treatment costs and associated care." Time seemed to freeze. Michael felt his legs weaken, and he had to hold firmly onto the edge of the sink. Is this some kind of mistake?" "No, sir. It's absolutely real. Dr. Williams would like to speak with you and your wife tomorrow to discuss the next steps. The treatment could begin next week." Michael covered his mouth with his free hand, tears silently streaming down his face. In the background, the noise of dishes and pans in the kitchen continued, but for him, the world had momentarily stopped. "Mr. Rodriguez, are you there?" Yes. Sorry. It's just that..." "Thank you. My God, thank you so much." "There's no need to thank us. Just come with your wife tomorrow at 2 p.m. to Dr. Williams's office. All the details will be explained." When he hung up the phone, Michael remained motionless for several minutes, processing the news. A co-worker entered the kitchen and stopped when he saw him. "Michael? Is everything okay, man?" Michael turned, a broad smile contrasting with the tears on his face. "My son is going to receive the treatment," he said, almost not believing his own words. "Ethan is going to have a real chance." At that moment, miles away, Steph Curry observed the city of San Francisco from the hospital terrace, satisfied with the first phase of the plan completed. Some battles were worth much more than those fought on basketball courts, and this was definitely one of them. 3 months passed since the beginning of the CAR-T treatment. Spring was arriving in San Francisco, bringing milder weather and clear skies that seemed to mirror the change in the Rodriguez family's fortune. Michael pushed the cart through the supermarket with Ethan walking by his side. An everyday scene for many families, but one that represented an extraordinary achievement for them. The boy was still thin, and his energy hadn't fully returned, but the sparkle in his eyes told a different story from that of months ago. "Can I get the cereal, Dad?" asked Ethan, pointing to a box with the Warriors logo. "Sure, champion. Today you choose breakfast." The most recent tests showed an exceptional response to the treatment. The cancer cells had drastically reduced, and although doctors avoided the word cure, they spoke with growing optimism about prolonged remission. It was more than the family dared to hope just a few months ago. The question of the anonymous donor continued to be a mystery that occasionally kept Michael awake at night. Who would have been touched by his story to the point of dispersing almost $700,000? Dr. Williams remained firm in her position of confidentiality, only ensuring that the person wished to remain anonymous and that the gesture had been made without expectation of recognition. That same night, Michael returned to Tina's kitchen for his shift. With Ethan's improvement, he had considered leaving the second job, but something kept him connected to that small restaurant. Perhaps it was gratitude for Mr. Patel being so understanding during the most difficult moments, or perhaps it was something else he couldn't explain. The restaurant was quiet for a Thursday, with only a few tables occupied. Michael was organizing the cutlery when the door opened. Something in the posture of the entering customer caught his attention. There was something strangely familiar about that silhouette. When the man removed his cap, Michael froze. Steph Curry was standing at the entrance of the restaurant, accompanied by Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. The receptionist, visibly nervous, led the NBA stars to a table at the back of the restaurant. Coincidentally, the same table where Steph had sat months ago. Michael watched, paralyzed, as the players settled in. Mr. Patel emerged from his office, clearly excited by the presence of the celebrities, and approached the table to personally welcome them. After a few moments, the manager returned to the kitchen, practically floating. "Michael, that table is your responsibility now. They specifically asked for you." "For me?" stammered Michael, confused. "Yes, it seems Curry has been here before and liked your service. Go." With trembling legs, Michael approached the table. Steph Curry looked up, a warm smile on his face. "Michael, right?" he asked, as if he didn't know the answer. Yes, sir," replied Michael, suddenly aware that he was standing before his son's idol. "It's an honor to have you here." "I was here a few months ago," said Steph casually. "I remember we chatted a bit. How's your son? Ethan, isn't it?" Michael felt his heart leap. He remembered the celebrity with whom he had shared his pain in a moment of vulnerability, remembered his son's name. He's much better, actually. Going through a new treatment that has been working incredibly well." Steph's eyes shone with something that Michael couldn't immediately identify. "That's wonderful to hear. A true blessing." "It really is," agreed Michael, still trying to process the situation. "What can I serve you gentlemen today?" After noting the orders, Michael returned to the kitchen, feeling as if he was in a dream. When he returned with the drinks, Steph resumed the conversation. "You know, Michael, we have some extra tickets for Sunday's game against the Celtics. I thought maybe Ethan would like to watch." Michael almost spilled the water he was serving. "It would be amazing, but, well, recently coming out of treatment, crowds are still a risk and—" "I completely understand," interrupted Steph. "That's why I thought of inviting you to our private box. Controlled environment, separate entrance, no crowds. What do you think? You, Ethan, your wife, and your daughter." It was at that moment that something clicked in Michael's mind. The conversation months ago, the mysteriously approved treatment right after, and now this invitation. "It was you," he whispered, understanding, dawning on his face. "The philanthropic research program." Steph maintained his smile, but his eyes became serious. "I like to think we were in the right place at the right time. Your family deserved that chance, Michael." The waiter felt tears forming in his eyes, an overwhelming emotion taking over him. Draymond and Klay observed with discreet smiles, clearly familiar with this less public side of their teammate. "I don't know how—" "You don't need to say anything," Steph replied gently. "Just bring Ethan on Sunday, 2 hours before the game, VIP entrance. I'll send the details by message." Sunday arrived with an electric energy that permeated the Rodriguez apartment. Ethan, wearing his worn Warriors t-shirt, could barely contain his excitement as his mother adjusted his new cap, a special gift bought for the occasion. "Am I really going to meet Steph Curry?" he asked for the 10th time that morning, his voice overflowing with emotion. "Yes, champion," confirmed Michael, adjusting his own tie, the only one he owned. "He's especially eager to meet you." The Chase Center stood imposingly against the blue sky when the family arrived. A team representative was already waiting for them at the VIP entrance, guiding them through exclusive corridors until they reached a reserved area with a privileged view of the court. Ethan was speechless seeing the players warming up below. His eyes immediately fixed on the figure in jersey number 30, shooting from impossible points with supernatural ease. "Dad, look! It's him!" whispered Ethan, squeezing Michael's hand with surprising strength for someone still in recovery. As if feeling the boy's eyes on him, Steph looked up at that exact moment. Upon seeing Ethan, he opened a wide smile and waved. To the family's surprise, he abandoned his warm-up and walked to the technical area, briefly talking with an assistant who soon headed to the stands. Minutes later, the family was being led to the edge of the court. "Ethan!" called Steph, approaching with an Under Armour shoebox in hand. "I'm so happy you could come." The boy was paralyzed, looking at his idol as if he were an apparition. You know my name," was all he could say. Steph laughed, crouching down to be at the boy's height. "Of course I do. I've heard a lot about you. You're the real warrior here." He handed the box to Ethan, who opened it with trembling hands, revealing a pair of Curry 9 shoes autographed with the message, "Tattoo, Ethan, who knows what it means to never give up? Your friend, Steph Curry." Elena couldn't hold back tears seeing her son, who a few months ago was fighting to stay alive, now living a moment that seemed taken from a dream. Sophia, although too young to fully understand the significance of that moment, felt the magic in the air. 6 months later, a new routine had been established in the Rodriguez family's life. The support fund created by Curry's foundation allowed Elena to return to college, to complete her specialization in oncology nursing, while Michael reduced his workload to just one job, spending more time with the children. Ethan remained in remission, his monthly checkups bringing only good news. The boy had returned to school and even started attending the adapted basketball classes that the Eat, Learn, Play Foundation had recently inaugurated for children recovering from serious illnesses. On a sunny afternoon, Michael watched Ethan practicing shots on a small basket, installed in the park near the apartment. The boy still wore the autographed shoes, although they were too big for his feet, with extra socks to compensate for the difference. His phone vibrated with a message from Steph, who occasionally checked how the family was doing. He had become a constant, albeit discreet, presence in their lives, not as a celebrity, but as someone who, by chance, crossed their path at a crucial moment and chose to make a difference. As he watched his son smiling under the California sun, Michael reflected on how a simple conversation in a restaurant had changed the course of their lives. In the frantic world they lived in, it was easy to forget that behind each casual encounter could exist an opportunity for genuine connection, for compassion, for change. Ethan shot the ball, which perfectly went through the hoop. Turning to his father with a radiant smile, he shouted, 3 points! And Michael knew, with absolute certainty, that some victories went far beyond basketball courts.